Delta live. Good evening. How's everyone doing? It's alongside our guest, uh, recent fill-in landlord we have on the show most of the part-time, Bill Biko from theeducatedlandlord.com. And as always, my partner in crime. Oh, look at that! I didn't mute my phone. Chris Noble. Yeah. Chris Noble from Ponoka, Alberta. Folks, we are the Shop Talk, the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk, the only show dedicated to landlording in Alberta. My name is Mackenzie Wilson. Very excited to have you guys tonight. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing tonight?
Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Bill?
Wow, I'm just salivating looking at your place in the background there, going, I got to come over and hang out with you, buddy. That is a good-looking room you got going behind you.
You like my basement?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, we'll host a show here one night. So.
Oh, I'm excited already.
Yeah,
get the draft.
It's worth the commute.
We're missing Andrea. So what I heard, she's got on a pretty important phone call, so she kind of put us on the burner for a few minutes.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have Andrea Warkentin. She's one of our preferred partners. She's out of Central Alberta, servicing all the good communities around Red Deer. She'll be on here once she's off, doing a little bit of last-minute business. And folks, all we're doing tonight is taking good old landlord questions, which I think kind of what got the show off when we first got going was the popularity was just taking challenging situations and taking some experienced landlords and talking to you guys about it. So let's do a quick introductions for people who have not met Bill. Bill, what's your 30-second pitch of who you are and why are you a landlord?
I can't do it in 30 seconds. Can I have a minute?
You can get 15 seconds now.
Hey, I'm coming up on 20 years as a landlord. I started early 2000s and had about 1,500 tenants since I've started. Went crazy, owned a bunch of properties, did a lot of crazy things, and I got a little bit of experience of what's going on. I run a couple of websites. Can I say both of them? AlbertaEviction.com, where I help landlords with the eviction stuff, and then theeducatedlandlord.com, where I'm actually helping landlords all over the planet. I've got landlords from Australia, all over the US, North America, even Europe, who read some information, just guiding people along. There. Did I get it down to 30? How did I do?
Yeah, that was speedy, clear, articulated, and we know who you are, Bill. So thank you. Chris, if people don't know who you are, I'd be surprised if they don't, but who are you, Chris?
Well, I had this bright idea one day. I want to be a landlord. So I talked to a partner of mine. I said, hey, why don't we buy a place and rent it out? And he goes, yeah, that's a good idea. What do you need? I said, we need 20% down. So I need half of 20 out of you and me. He says, sounds good. You have a place? Yep. We bought a place, got a smoking deal on it, and threw a renter in there. Isn't that all there is to it, Bill?
That's pretty well it. You summed it up.
And then things happened. You got mad, started a Facebook group, and 3 years later, here we are.
That's pretty much how it went after that. It had someone in there, had a wreck, I got PO'd because of the bad renter I had. But you know what? I created this page. It evolved from there. And what did I learn? That it's on me. Didn't do proper background checks. Started to run the business from my heart and thought compassion and love and caring. And that's all a bunch of BS.
Okay.
So I just said, you know what? No more of this. And I said, we got to make some changes. And lo and behold, I bought a second property, then a third property. And I started to say, you need to run this like a business, Chris Noble. Like, what's going on? And I had a partner that was a little bit disconnected. So it was all falling on me. So lo and behold, Mac McKenzie shows up and he says, hey, Chris Noble, you have quite the page here. I think we should do something with it. I said, what do you have in mind? Next thing you know, I'm appearing on a show a year and a half later. And here we are with educated people like Bill Biko and Andrea Warkentin, who's going to join us in a few minutes, and on we go. And we partnered with so many people.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, I gave him gold. I'm only silver, right? So.
All right. Well, let's say hello to everyone who's tuning in. We've got a bunch of landlords on. We've got Christine from BC, Bill down in Lethbridge. We've also got Lewis here in Calgary. Good to see you, Lewis. Kathy as well. Thanks for joining us, Kathy. We've got a few of your guys' questions queued up from off the page, and let's kind of have at it. And we'll take one question right now, and folks, build on for what we're talking about, because questions on the fly, we'll dig into the details, and also the goal is to give you guys the information you need to run your landlording business. So without further ado, let's pull one in here. And I'm going to try something a bit different, a little more efficient, and share my screen and have all the information you guys are looking for in one place. And I think that'll drop us down. Okay. It's a screen capture program, but hey, that's okay. Nice and easy to read. We've got Christine that wrote, I have a property rented until April 2022. It's a year lease. When can I list it for sale? I'm going to say right off the hop, I don't think there's a rule in this. I never even thought to answer this question. But gentlemen, what would you say? Bill, since you're our guest host?
Well, it's a trick question. You can list it at any time. It's your property. You can go ahead and sell it. Mm-hmm. The challenge is, because you have a year lease in place, you have to honor that lease. Absolutely. Now, you do have the option that you could buy the tenant out. And, if it's a year lease and it's running till April, that means you basically just started it. That might be an expensive proposition to the tenant. It's like, you want me out? Pay me $6,000 or $10,000. This is a decision that probably should have been made before you rented it out. But I know a lot of landlords do this. They want to put tenants in. So question number 2 is, how are you going to try and sell it? Is it a good rental property? I see this one so often recently where people are saying, I have my rental property. It was a great investment. It'd be perfect for a new landlord. Do the math with the price increases lately. A lot of these properties that were bought in 2005, they were great properties for cash flow because you only had a $120,000 mortgage on it. But now when you're selling it at $375,000 and somebody's got a $325,000 mortgage and their payments are $1,400, it's a tough sell as a rental property. You got to make sure you've got all your expenses built in there. So if it's not a rental property, you've got a tenant in there, now you got a problem. So you're going to have to negotiate to get them out. And then the scary part is, if you have a bad tenant, if you haven't properly screened your tenant and you have somebody who knows the rules better than you, they can work you so hard. You're trying to show the property, they can stall, delay, cause issues, and get to the point where they can actually delay it enough that you have to pay them to get them out of there. So lots of challenges with listing it if it's rented out on a full-term lease like that. So good evening, Andrea.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No problem. I'm glad that we've got you here.
We're glad you showed up. Thanks for coming, Bill. And we'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, let's get Andrea in the hot seat. She's been in the show for 23 seconds. Andrea, we got a question for you.
Yes.
It's up on the screen there. So when can we list a property? Christine here's got it rented out to April 2022.
Yeah, that's really hard because you have to inherit the lease on it. So anyone who buys it, and if it's a rental property and somebody's buying it as a rental, that's probably not a big deal. But if you have a property that a family might want to move into, then they're kind of stuck. So it's not the greatest way to sell a house.
For sure. And there's some nuances here. And I think the takeaway is, what's the difference on a term lease versus a month lease when we're looking at selling a property?
Well, with a term lease, you have to honor the term.
It is.
Whereas with a month, you can give that 90-day notice once conditions have been removed.
There you go. So,
and again, that conditions removed is a big challenge as well, because you're talking 90 days after conditions are removed. So it's like 120-day possession for a property, which will push a lot of buyers off, making it a tough sell as well. So,
absolutely.
Unless we're going back to, are you targeting the right demographic, and maybe it's an investment property if the numbers make sense. So good points all the way around. And I just wanted to really clarify that term lease versus month to month, because I see that brought up quite often in the group, and people will confuse month to month conditions on ending a term lease. But term is term. It has a fixed start and end date. And that's it. Like you said, it's not movable, negotiable, unless both parties, the landlord and the tenants, both agree to terminate that lease. It's not going anywhere. Very cool. And folks, feel free to ask questions as we kind of go through this. Let's introduce Andrea. Andrea, for the folks that don't know who you are, who is Andrea?
Hi, my name is Andrea Warkentin. I'm in Red Deer, so I'm a licensed property manager and realtor in the Central Alberta area. And I've been a real estate investor since 2003 when I bought my first investment property. And I love all things real estate.
Adding realtor to the title, that's a new addition. So congratulations, Andrea.
Thank you.
It's been on the show last. So, all right. Well, we'll speed into another question here, Chris. Chris, I know you're watching comments and scanning Facebook. Is there anything you want to add in? Do you want to take the next question? Do you want me just to hit one up for us?
No, I'll just kind of add into this one Christine brought up. Interesting, today I did a walkthrough for a remote landlord who takes possession of a place tomorrow, subject to all the paperwork. And they are, I did the initial, it's 4 units, and they wanted someone to do a walkthrough for them. So I went and did that. And interesting what you'll find in how 4 different people live in the same building. So Andrea, you're smiling. It's kind of like, eh?
Yes.
Well, this kind of leads into a good tip if you're buying multifamily as a landlord, and someone says you can look at the first 2 to 3 units of an 8-unit or 10-unit building. I think the what you just said there, Chris, you look at every unit because not all the same. They could be updated quite a bit differently too, in terms of fixtures, appliances, and whatnot.
Yeah. So anyway, I know we have one problem already, and I've talked to him about it. He has on a month-to-month, and the place, you couldn't walk around it without breaking your neck, and it was a mess. And so we're gonna, as soon as he gets possession of it, we'll have a chat about it. So,
Okay.
What else you got for questions there, Mac?
Let's get in the next one here. Kathy wrote yesterday. This might have already been brought to people's attention, but I thought I would share it. Facebook Marketplace is a source for about 80% of my inquiries. So I'm a little nervous about losing it as it's an advertising source, or as an advertising source. Where does everyone advertise these days? So thanks very much. Who wants to take a run this first?
Sure, I'll answer.
All right, Andrea.
I feel like it's kind of regional because here in Red Deer area, we use Facebook Marketplace pretty exclusively. But when we get out to the smaller centers like Ponoka, if I have a house in Ponoka, I advertise it on Kijiji. So there is, Facebook rental groups as well, which we sometimes use. And I know in the larger centers, Rent Faster, so if you're in Edmonton or Calgary, is quite common. But for us here in Red Deer, mostly Facebook Marketplace. It's free and there's a lot of volume on there. So we used to use the Facebook rental groups quite a bit, but we've kind of shied away from that because you get people who seem to have nothing better to do than make stupid comments on it and want to argue with you. So we just use Facebook Marketplace unless it's something, unusual, then we'll use Kijiji.
Okay. Awesome.
I saw a comment that came up where one gentleman used Marketplace up in Edmonton area, and he put his place up for $1,250, I think, and the lady wrote back. They says, "Yeah, I would be interested in your place for $1,100. Can I see it?" And he said that it wasn't available for $1,100, and then the person turned it in. I don't know if that was Edmonton or Calgary. I think it might have been Calgary. Anyway, it turned it into a personal attack against the person who is of Indian descent, and personally attacked the person and turned it into a racial issue. Like, I guess flags are waving there as to whether you really want this person now or not. And then I saw another comment on another page where someone said, "Yeah, can you please confirm an hour before that you're coming?" And the lady got angry with him and said, "I told you I was coming. I don't need to confirm an hour before." He says, "Look, I got a 45-minute drive. I want to make sure we're both on the same page and we're going to meet." And anyhow, I totally get what you're saying. People can be so conflictual, but I guess in a good way that they are, because now you don't want them as a renter.
Yeah, do it up front and skip those 2 bullets.
It weeds them out quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Bill, got a take on this question as well? Where you look for advertising sources?
Of course I do. So
that's why you're here.
Yeah, right now it's actually pretty easy. So I mean, you can just throw it up at 1 or 2 places and you're fine. When the market's a little bit tougher, it's a matter of just being everywhere. And what I recommend landlords in their area, do a quick search on Google, If it's a 3-bedroom townhouse in Lacombe, type in 3-bedroom townhouse Lacombe, see what comes up, see what your top 3 or 4 places are, and then advertise there. That's where the tenants who are looking for something like that will be looking as well, and you'll be in the most common places. And if it costs money, it costs money. The goal is to get those vacancies filled. Free is great, and too many landlords get into the trap of just advertising it on the free sites, and maybe it takes an extra 2 weeks or a month to get it filled. If you need it filled, you advertise everywhere, and if the market's tighter where there's less tenants looking, you want it in dozens of places if you can, just in case you get somebody to see it.
Well,
So
on that note, when you talk about time is money, if they're taking an additional 2 weeks, let's call it $1,000 rent, that's $500 or $250 a week. I think I've been pretty happy to pay $30 up front to have it rented a lot sooner. So, and yeah,
Mackenzie, you know me and my personality. We'll put this into something everybody can relate to. You can go to the free dating site, you know what you're going to get, or you can pay and know what you're going to get, right? Who's serious and who isn't?
You know what? When there's a little bit of money on the line, it does qualify. They add a bit more and probably get more qualified tenants that know that too. So there you go. And then Bill, yeah, you said exactly that, right? If you guys don't know what's good in your area, do the search. Do multiple search terms too. So it could be a house for rent, 3 bedrooms for rent, condo, apartment, whatever you're looking for, or that your product falls into. And every search will have slightly different results, but the top results are where people are looking for rentals. You want to be visible on those top sites, and that's the key takeaway. And like what Andrea noted too as well, she raised a good point, is the demographics. 2 things happen here. So there's a geographic component. So what people use down in Calgary will be different from people up in Edmonton and people in Red Deer, GP, all the different places will use different platforms. And then on top of that, the type of tenant you get from each platform will be different. So you might have a younger demographic, maybe using an app online to search for their rental unit, or you might have an older demographic, maybe using Kijiji or something like that. So again, depending where your product fits, if you're targeting an older or younger demographic, you might want to lean to one platform over the other. So, and how will you figure this out? You got to get out there and just start experimenting the market, start looking at other people's ads that are similar to yours, and or get advertised in all those locations to see what type of demographic you have coming in. The worst thing you could do here is if you pick one medium to advertise on and you only get a certain demographic and it's not the right fit, you could be really handcuffing yourself from the right people if they're somewhere else in a different platform. So there's my tech rant for the show. All right, we'll move on to the next question here. Oh, actually, hold on. Before we even do that, Sean threw a note up here. I asked on this website, but I figured I could ask it here as well. Recommendations for where to get a residential lease to use. Oh, there you go. Angie, I'll throw this back to you. What would you recommend for a place to find a lease if you're your new landlord?
Well, there's your site. I think it's a great place to start. Yeah, there are services that you can, I want to call it the Calgary Rental Association or something like that.
Residential Rental Association,
yes.
CRRA.
Yeah, they have sample lease agreements. We've kind of tweaked our own over the years for different clauses we like to have. But it's a good starting point to either go somewhere like your website that already has some samples, or somewhere like the Calgary Residential Association there. Yeah.
Bill, how about yourself? Where did you go for a lease?
That'd be self-promotion. I can't do that. So yeah, the lease is kind of a living document for a lot of landlords. As time goes along, it just constantly evolves. So, I mean, you could start with your lawyer. If you have a real estate lawyer, they may have a good template for you to start with as well. And then just tweak it as you move along and as you learn new and specialized information from great groups like this.
I'm going to politely disagree with Bill. I say do not go to a lawyer, because typically most lawyers do not have experience with leases, especially residential rental leases, and they're going to charge you a lot. You're not going to get a lot in return. So funny enough, I took training from a gentleman on the show, Bill Biko, way back in my early days of landlording, and he gave me a lease. And it was such a great lease, I couldn't explain it. And it looked really embarrassing the first couple times I used it, and I actually dropped using a very complex lease. So I did what Andrea suggested, is get Calgary Residential Rental Association, and I think Edmonton has the equivalent as well, has a very easy to read, plain language, but still, I wouldn't call it bulletproof, but a really well written lease. And if you guys are new to the game, I would suggest starting there, because there's nothing worse when you're the first or second time you sit down with a tenant as you try to explain the lease, and you can't even walk through the lease because you don't know what all the clauses mean. It doesn't instill a lot of confidence in the tenant that's about to sign up with you, and it actually may make them walk. I think start there, and then as you get more experience, you get a few renewals underneath your belt, then look at starting adding in the lessons learned, say, off of our Facebook group, and add in your own custom clauses to make it more bulletproof over time. Like what Bill said, this really is a living document, and every year you're probably going to do a small tweak here and there to add in a new rule, or perhaps retweak how the pricing goes to protect yourself a little bit more as you get more and more experience. But if you take a really complex lease right off the hop and you're very new to landlording, it might not show well when you can't sit there and properly explain all the different components of it. Chris, what do you think?
I agree.
Okay.
No, you two know what you're talking. You're right. That's what I've done since day one. My partner was a lawyer, so I had his lease, and I look at this thing after page after page after page, and I realized that it needed to be much simpler. So from this page, I've evolved, and I think I got a neat, tidy little lease of my own going on.
Perfect. Cool. Awesome. And Kathy just tied into to your question there, Sean. It's ARLA, Alberta Residential Landlord Association in Edmonton. And they have a lease as well. So very cool. Fantastic. Yeah. All right. So let's hop on to the next question. I've got Santash's question here. Is anyone here willing to share a template for a 90-day notice to end a month-to-month tenancy? I read the RTA, but just to make sure, if I serve the notice on June 1st, planning to stick it to the door and take a picture, the tenant has to be out by August 31st. Is this correct? Thanks in advance. This is a bit of a trick question, but I'm going to throw it to our two experienced landlords and see what they say first. So, Bill, I'll let you go first, and then we'll follow up with Andrea.
Okay, I did read the question on the site, and he did say he does have somebody moving in, a family member moving in. So he's actually got a valid reason. So that's the most important thing. Because it is month to month, you have to have a valid reason, and that just happens to be one of the few reasons that you can end a tenancy like this. So that should be fine. Let me just count the months: June, July, August. Yeah, that's fine.
So, okay, and I'll throw this to Andrea.
Mm-hmm. So technically, I think I want to say it's actually a 3-month notice, because not every calendar month is 30 days. And
Correct.
so it has to be served on the 1st, but it's a 3-month notice. I think it's potatoes, but if you really want to get technical, I don't think it would be thrown out if you said 90-day notice on it, but.
No, but I think the important part here is if he wants to have them out by end of August, so August, July, June, it's got to be 3 clear months. He can't serve it on June 1st. It's got to be May 31st or sooner. And that's kind of the point I wanted to highlight here. And this was brought to my attention by actually one of our eviction specialists, Brad Longeray with Servit. He said, this is why it's important to call a 3-month notice, is if you miss one day, you're actually making a 4-month. You've just now turned into a 4-month instead of 90 days. So that was the kind of the big takeaway. So you can't be serving on June 1st. So Santosh, if you're watching here, bud, serve it this week. You're anytime in May, because if you go one day into June, you're now waiting to the end of September. And that will kind of suck if you've got plans. So
something that just popped into mind for me is I put this out there to all the landlords. If you don't have a copy of the Residential Tenancy Act in your filing cabinet, you need to have one, and you need to take the time, and instead of reading that book, read this at night at bedtime because it's something you need to know. So if you want to get yourself a copy, one is you can go to Google Alberta Residential Tenancy Act PDF, and it will come up and you can have it right there. You can print it off, or you can go to Alberta Queen's Printers and you can order your own copies from there, as well as the regulations that go with it as well. So there's the act and the regulations. And I encourage you all to have a copy at your fingertips. I think, Mac, you can reach over your shoulder and you can point at it. You keep one right there at your desk. And mine's right over there. So
I'm going to do a shameless plug here. We do have our own community. It's off of Facebook, and we've got a bit of a filing system here, but I've gone through and uploaded more than just the RTA. So here's the RTA. We have the specified penalty listing, which I think is kind of a cool document. It's what police carry on them. And they have fines listed for most of the most common infractions against the RTA. So kind of a cool thing there, as well as we've got a cannabis production and consumption with the RTA. Andrea, you supplied this to me, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
We've got all types of different notes in here. We also got understanding service pets, and actually they have to have a legal Alberta identification card. So folks, there's a difference between a emotional pet and a service pet. Lots of good information. The Warehouseman's Lien Act is in here as well. And we just recently I added this so we could go with the Condominium Act. I have some more information. Folks, if you didn't see our last show last week, it was really good. We had a sheriff on with SCAN, it's Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Unit, and they're a specific law enforcement unit that only focuses on problem properties. So obviously, us being the business of being landlords and providing rental properties, really important for us to know as a stakeholder in the process. So worth checking that show out if you guys haven't already. It's both here in Alberta Landlordcommunity.ca or on the Facebook group. Out of respect for our guest, he did ask it not to be posted publicly, so you cannot find that show on YouTube. So it has to be in one of these two places. So the caveat there.
Right. And Mac, for the person who's just about to say, hey, where did he say we could find that? Could you just tell everybody again where you found what you just put up?
You bet. Right at the very top here, it's Alberta Landlordcommunity.ca. And you guys can get signed up with your Facebook account or just create a new account, whatever you find is more convenient, and you'll get access to all that good information in there. So do we want to add on to this question? I think we kind of nailed this one out. Let's take the next one. So Chris, you captured this question. How about I let you take this one away?
Sure. Are you able to blow that up a bit? It's small on the
Yeah, it is actually pretty bad. Hey, let me do that for you.
No, it's old people that can't. So Luke Campbell, he says, I know this has been answered here before, but for the life of me, he cannot find it. So his question is, we have a tenant that's destructive and has caused a lot of damage in our unit. She is on a fixed term lease until the end of August. Are we required to give her 3 months notice that we are not going to renew for just the month prior? So a little bit, there's a lot to this question. So Luke, first off, do you want the income between now and August? And if you do, at what cost are you willing to take that income versus what's going to be going out? So you've just told us all that she's damaging your property and that sounds like you're concerned. That's why you're asking, because you say, well, we don't want her there. We want to give her notice. Do we have to wait? I think at this point, from a business perspective, my position here is that this person should be given a 14-day notice to vacate. But now you want to say, okay, well, what are all my reasons? Well, first off, you should be doing a home inspection. So you should be giving 24-hour notice and going in and making a list of problems. Sorry, not a list of problems, but you should be making a list of what your concerns are and why would you want this person evicted. But if you're in there, can you just address the problems and ask them to be fixed and give them a timeline and then carry on until the end and give the notice? So you've got to give a little more information for all of us to work with, but at the same time, you've got to reevaluate how badly do you want to keep this person and what's the end result, the end cost going to be to you if they stay versus getting them out now. So
Andrea, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, I agree. And actually, Luke is a woman because I know her.
Oh, you know what? I
Sorry.
apologize, Luke. I apologize. You know what? I got a friend who spells his name Luke, and I apologize, Luke. So
That's okay. It's only because I know her.
thank you, Andrea.
Yes, I agree. Like, I don't think somebody is worth keeping. If you know that they're actively damaging your property, I would get them out as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, you want to tag in on that too?
Same storyline. It's just a matter of what landlords have different versions of destructive. So, some landlords find a little excess wear and tear to be destructive, and in other cases, tenants are punching holes. So, where is that line? And is it something that would be provable in court where there is massive destruction, or just something that could be fixed up quickly and easily and even applied out of the security deposit? If the damages are going to be more than the security deposit, suddenly it's starting to get really serious. So that's where you need to jump in.
Yeah, definitely a numbers game here. Keeping this person having to pay rent while they're actively damaging the place, does that mean you need new whole flooring for 1,000 square foot house? Are you repainting walls, re-drywalling? How much cost are you driving up right there? And not only we looking at the numbers side of this, because we are running a business. What about the stress in your mental health, dealing with this eviction, having to go find trades, having to get your place back up to market condition before you can get it rented out again? I would almost rather lose a month's rent knowing I don't have to do the logistics of doing a renovation. If it keeps the place in good shape, I'd much rather just take that loss of rent and move on and get a new tenant in there that's going to be respectful and pay rent on time.
Yeah. Just as a sidebar to this one, because it brings back a question that was put on the page where someone commented that they hear a lot of negative stories and they see a lot of negativity and angry landlords. So here's an example. This isn't an angry landlord. This is a landlord that is concerned of what's going to happen to the property, and they're reaching out for help. And you're hearing us say, well, you got to go and do an inspection, build a case, do this. We're not out to get a tenant to get them out. What we're trying to do is build a case that either supports a reason to fix it or has a direction to fix the problem, in the sense that, okay, start repairing the walls, let's bring someone in, you need to be accountable, or going the other way, we need to get them evicted. That's why we want to go and do an inspection. So I challenged that lady to post some happy comments and post some good stories, and she did, and I'm happy that she did, and a lot of other people followed suit. So with that said, since we kind of half touched on this, I'd like people to, if you are having good luck and you are having good tenants and they are moving to a new community, please feel free to reach out to the group and say, hey, look, I got some great tenants going from Calgary up to Edmonton, and have them try to get them connected with a good landlord. And that's what we'll do in this community. And if you've had a good post, somebody gave you a gift, they were so happy, tell those stories. We need to hear them too. So
yeah, maybe you have Monday. We'll call it Monday motivators. Hop on Monday. We'll start the week with a positive note and share something that makes you happy with this business. Because I'm going to add two things to this. We really see the tip of the iceberg of the challenging situations. I know, Andrew, I've had you talk about this before, but out of all of your units, how many problems are you kind of typically dealing with, and give us a percentage? I know you're probably managed, but
at one time.
Well, no, but so you manage. I know you're growing as your property manager as well. You've got 180 doors underneath your umbrella, give or take.
Over 200 now.
Over 200. See, that's why every time I
mind.
get you on the show, I have to update my stats. So I'll do 200 plus. So you got 200 plus doors under your purview, and
Yeah.
how many doors are giving you problems that you're concurrently dealing with right now? None. So really, most of the time when there's no problem, we don't hear anything, and that's kind of the way this business works. We only hear trouble when there's trouble going on, or the worst of it. So, and just to add on one more thing too, she said about she's on a fixed term to the end of August. Are we required? And I'll go back to the thing here. Are we required to give her 3 months notice? No, you can give any notice you want on a fixed term. You're not even required to give notice on the fixed term. However, I'd highly recommend it because people need some time to plan the logistics of moving. So if you don't want someone staying over past the end of their lease, give them some notice so they can find the time to move out. But
let's throw a spin into that, and I'll get Andrea and Bill to answer this. Is that let's say you don't give notice and you walk in the 30th at noon saying, "I'm here for your inspection. How come you haven't moved?" Well, you never told us we had to move. Well, your term ended. You needed to move, and so now you're in argument. Says, "Well, we're not going anywhere because I got nowhere to go." So now what happens? Do you take the next month's rent? Do you sign a new lease? Now you want to take them to the RTDRS. What do you think the commissioner is going to say? I don't think they're going to kick them out. They may give them 60 days to get out at that point. But over to you and Bill and Andrea. How would that be dealt with?
I'll let Bill go ahead first.
So yeah, you run into the issue if you're not giving them enough time to get out. The hearing officer or the judge, whichever method you go, will grant them a lot of extra time because you simply haven't given them time to move. And you're supposed to take the money because it reduces your losses, but it gets into a tricky scenario of, have you now entered a month-to-month agreement? So you may have to put something in place where you've got something in writing saying, this is not a month-to-month agreement. We're accepting this just to cover your assets, and you don't get in trouble.
Yeah, I would probably add on to that. I'd say if I was in that predicament, I would write a temporary 1-month lease, collect that rent, and have it very clearly stated you've got 30 days to find a new home. And I'll help you with it. I'm just giving you a heads up right now. Well, it should have been done already. But if I was in that position where they're going to overstay, collect the money, add a new lease with 1 month, keep all the same rules and all the same stuff. Just you now terminate the next month at the end of that month at noon.
Andrea's turn.
Yeah, in that case, I would certainly, because sometimes people forget things, but I would certainly say, hey, let's sign another 30 days, 1 month lease, fixed term, and let's figure it out. Like, are you moving or are we going to re-sign a new 1-year lease? So if you really wanted them out, I would just do a 1 month lease.
Yeah.
All good.
I think we're going to take Don to task on his comment here, Mac. I think you should go down to it, our Edmonton eviction services, because it ties into what we're doing here.
Let's do it. So I just want to highlight Kathy's good point here. She's got 34 rentals and she's got no problem tenants right now. So that's awesome. Like I said, this group just typically sees the worst of the worst because people are in dire straits. They come on to look for questions to the challenges they're seeing being a landlord. And Christine mentioned something a little bit earlier here when we were tackling Luke's question, and I think the question prior as well. I think some landlords think they cannot get rid of a tenant if they're in a fixed lease, and absolutely, some people feel like they're locked into the end of that term. But if that person is breaching the lease, which is by all means not paying rent on time or damaging the property at hand, that's the two most common breaches we see. You can end that term lease for sure, going through to RTDRS or through the court system. So let's segue here, and we want to tackle. What were you saying here? Well, we're going to go up to Don's saying don't take next month's rent. Is that what you're saying there, Chris?
I'm saying that, and also Lena George up above that says Facebook user. She's saying the same thing, and I'm slightly tending to disagree because now you're behind an 8 ball, and I think this is a debatable, but there's a win-win for everybody in this, and I don't think you have to set yourself up, and not taking the money, I wholeheartedly believe is the wrong approach.
Well, so I think so. Who said this comment, Chris?
That's Lena.
Edmonton eviction. Done.
Well, no, and up above further is Lena George. She's saying
the one we got on the screen is Lena. So I think the nuance here, I think what's really important is the communication. If you've gone, you realize it's already the first, it's a new month. He or she has stayed past their term. You've reached out to them, you get them to sign a new lease and then collect that money all in the same day or very closely tied. Or do you have communication right off the hop before you take that money saying, if you send me money, we're doing a 30-day lease. I'm getting this signed ASAP with you. You show that attention, then you're fine. I think if there's no communication going on, you accept that money and continue as normal, and there's no lease in place, then what she's saying here is in fact true. Well, you'll get turned into a month-to-month lease, which you definitely don't want that because you give up a lot of power as the landlord.
The big issue here is none of this happens if you just give them notice. So
Yes.
give them 30 to 45 days notice, and then we're not even going down this route.
Mhm.
And, we as landlords create more problems for ourselves by taking shortcuts than anything. And, give notice, follow up, get things done right. And you won't have these other issues that you create for yourself.
Right.
Huh. Okay, like that. Good answer, Mackenzie. Thank you, Don. Yeah, you know what? It's kind of it's a really silly statement in the RTA where no notice is needed to give to end a term lease. It's really a moot point because we just said if we try to fight that by not giving any notice and then you try to kick them out on the first at the end of the lease, they're gonna get granted 60 days or 30 days at RTDRS anyway. So
I think they should be a subsection in that you have to give 30, let's say 30 or 60. It should be written in the act that you're required to give notice that you're not renewing the lease, and that if you give it late, say you give it on the 15th of the month they're supposed to be out, then it automatically transfers into an extension of the existing lease to the 30th of the following month because you were late giving it. I think that's how it should read. And then the landlord who makes a mistake is covered, and it's safe for the tenant because the landlord's not trying to kick them out. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts with that? Andrea?
Well, I think it's not a bad idea, but now you got to change the legislation. So good luck on that.
Yep, absolutely. But we'll get Rob on that. He's
there you go.
Dog with the bone. So,
all right, let's get the next one up here. Let's see if I can make this bigger. There we go. All right, Tara Brown asks, do both landlords, both property owners, have to sign the lease agreement with the tenants, or is it sufficient for one to sign? So we'll go with Andrea, then I'll throw it back down to Bill.
So you really only need one person to sign, and you can actually have an agent act on your behalf to sign. So in that case, it would be somebody like me, a property manager, could sign. Or, for example, if you were out of province and your parents were helping look after the property, they could sign as your agent. They can't sign as you, but they can sign as an agent.
Perfect. Bill?
How can you add to that?
I know. I still have to give you the choice, though.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking out loud here because I haven't really done this. I've always signed my own leases. Do you need some special paperwork saying that you're the agent of the landlord? Like where?
I've never been asked for it in court. I'll put it that way.
There we go. Okay. Good to know that. Interesting. And Don here from Edmonton Eviction Services just follows up. Good thing you're not in government, Chris.
I'm not sure I get that, Don, but you can enlighten me with a private comment on that.
Yeah. And Christine just adding on here, I write in my lease, if we do not have a signed renewal at a certain date, they are expected to move. Oh, so you know what? There's a good preamble right there. Is you have it clearly written in your lease from day one, the expectation at the end of the lease if there is no renewal. So all about the communication. All right, we'll hop on to the next question here. Mark Hickey wrote, let me make this a little bit bigger. To join this group to get the feel of rules and regulations in Alberta. What are some unique things to watch out once I move and start renting out a basement suite? Looking in that Calgary, if they have anything unique to them as well. So they're going to rent out a basement suite. What are some particular things they should watch out for? Mr. Bill Biko with the Educated Landlord, how do you answer this?
Well, I threw one answer in already to the question. Fixed term lease versus month to month, which we've already touched on here. So that's one of the huge things that so many landlords, especially out of province landlords, make because they're used to rules in other places, and every jurisdiction's got slightly different rules. So month to month is definitely bad in Alberta, and fixed term is definitely the way to go for landlords. So dead horse, continue to beat it.
I think one other thing that's important to know is when you're renting out suited houses, if they weren't specifically built and designed to be a suited house, that your basement tenant's going to hear a lot of noise transfer. And so you may want to think about who is a good basement suite tenant. So perhaps you're going to rent it to somebody who's away a lot of the time, who won't be bothered if there's little pitter patter of feet running around all day. You may just want to profile who your tenants would be. And one of the things I've seen over the years is when you have basement suites that weren't insulated properly or intended to be that way, or you have shared laundry even, you tend to get a higher turnover, more so in your basement than in your main floor, because of the noise, because of the lack of sunlight, and because of the lack of privacy. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing you said there, Andrea, I want to highlight is the fact that you have to really profile or pair up or match really good tenants that are aware of the situation. So if you've got a basement suite, and I know when you're doing your screening, ask the people, hey, have you lived in a basement suite before? Does noise bug you? Are you okay with a little bit of noise? Like having that conversation, because if anything, they'll just save you a headache down the road, dealing with a bunch of complaints, and then either having a tenancy end early and you're finding a tenant again. Trying to avoid that conversation. And Bill, like you mentioned, for sure, fixed lease all the time over a month. If you're unsure of a person, rent it for a shorter term up front. Do 2 months, do 3 months, or if you really want to do a 1 month to see how it goes. And if they're a good fit, then go into a longer term, 6 months or 12 months. One thing I'll add to this, this came up on the page, Chris, was it maybe 10 days ago or in the last couple of weeks here? A tenant complained on a landlord here in Calgary. The tenant, the landlord had an illegal basement suite, and that person's at risk of losing half of their income now on their property. So if you are in Calgary, you got to make sure right now you get that basement suite legalized. You're on the clock. It has to be legalized by the end of this year. And after that, the enforcement by Calgary will go from notices to active enforcement and fines. So it has to meet certain standards. If you get grandfathered, I can't remember the date. I think the cutoff was March 2018. If the basement suite was in prior existence to that date, you get grandfathered and you got a lesser standard to get it legalized, which means less cost to legalize it. But at any rate, if you are looking at investing in a basement suite in Calgary, it needs to be a legal basement suite. It's only a matter of time before you get shut down. And if you're cash flowing with 2 suites and you're not cash flowing with 1, that's a huge risk to your revenue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's basically it. Do we have other questions we want to throw in here? Oh, Kathy threw a question up here. Let me get rid of this, because I went through all of our questions on the page we got today. So this is like free for all at the end here. One question I have: what is the better method when renewing a lease? To renew an entire lease, or just to have a letter that the landlord and tenant sign stating that the initial lease is being renewed for another year? Ooh, I like this question. I have an opinion on this, but I'm going to wait to the end. Andrea, you go first, then we'll throw the bill.
Yeah, so typically there's 2 different ways that we would handle this. One is if everything's staying the same, you can just do a 1-page renewal to confirm all the existing parts of your lease will renew for a further 1 year. But if you are changing things on the lease agreement, you will definitely want to consider just drafting a new one. So if you're raising the rent, or if you're adding additional terms because you've come across somebody else's lease and you really like how it's written out, or you decide to add new air insurance as an example, or you want to put in something about, marijuana clause, then you'll want to make sure you're updating your lease. So I don't think it's a bad thing to kind of review your lease annually, talk to other landlords who have leases, and just maybe tweak a few things from what you've learned over the years. And so, yeah, that's my suggestion.
Love it. Bill?
Brand new lease every time is easiest, because you probably made some change along the way in the last year anyway. And it's just all nice and tidy that way, and they're all current. You're always running with the newest version.
Yeah, I believe you use the words living document, right, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's changes you're dealing with. Chris, what do you do?
I've got a new lease that I'm using now. I got it from another landlord on the page. Well, Andrew, Gord gave it to me. So I really like the way it's laid out. It's very clear what the costs will be if certain things aren't met at the end. And It deals with marijuana usage and a number of other things. So I'm switching all mine over to this version. It's neat and tidy. It's tidier than what I have, and that's why I like it.
What I also like too is if you're going to the bank to get refinanced or financed for a new property, you have to now provide two documents. You have to provide a lease with old dates and then a piece of statement saying this lease is still in effect, but here's the new terms. It just kind of gets messy. It's clean when you can give the bank a current lease. All in the lease has everything in one document, and the new rents, the new beginning and end dates are all in one place. I think it looks a little bit easier for the bank if you're trying to get more properties and qualify to grow your portfolio. But exactly as as everyone said on the show here, new lease all the time because we're always making those small tweaks and nuanced changes to make the lease better. And I always do fresh leases all the time. I don't do any sort of an extension letter. So that's that.
Here's a question about leases. Can you write into a lease that when this lease terminates, it automatically continues into a new reoccurring 90-day, 180-day lease? Can you do that?
Oh, you're on mute, I think, Andrea. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot I muted myself. I think you can write whatever you want to write. It's about whether it'll hold up in court or not. So, and whether it's clear and everyone understands it. So, I mean, you can write a fixed term lease that says, if both parties agree, we just go month to month thereafter, or both parties agree, we'll, write a brand new lease for the next year going forward. But, how complicated do you want to make it?
Well, I'm just thinking for, respectfully, the lazy landlord who says, okay, rather than me showing up here every 90 days, let's just write it so that once you're 90 days up, if you haven't heard from me, it goes to a new 90 day. And you write that in. Is it going to stand up? What do you think, Bill?
We need someone to test it in court for us.
I think you'd run into some challenges and you're better off. I mean, if you're a lazy landlord, get out of the business. But so,
well, all right.
If you're doing a 90-day, see it, Chris. So if you're doing a 90-day lease just to initially ease somebody into it, you want to come back in 90 days anyway and just see what the property's like. You're in that testing phase, making sure they're paying on time, making sure the place is maintained. You're going there anyway. Get the new lease done up when you're there. And Mackenzie said do it for 6 months or 12 months. Do it for 3 months if you're still unsure, or do it for 9 months. Get it on a year schedule so that you can raise the rent if you need to in that year period.
That's a great pro tip, Bill. So if you do 3 months up front, your trial period, you're happy, do the next renewal at 9 months. Because if you go a year, again, you've locked that price in. It's a fixed term. And now you're a year plus 3 months, so you're 50 months before you get your first price increase in that. Yes. What is the rule in Alberta? How often we can raise rents?
Every 365 days.
Boom. That is it. I like that. And I think probably what I'm going to do in mine, you guys kind of got me thinking, is I'm going to probably build a box and say in bold print or something, please note this lease does not auto renew into a month to month. If you stay past the end of this lease, you are overholding. And then, I'm going to make some sort of a nice little clear warning note on my lease, I think, for that, because I don't want to be in that position.
And that still ties in with making sure you give proper notice that 45 days before, or if you're keeping them, or even if you're not, that we have to get paperwork signed.
Oh, you know what? On a positive note, since we want to be more positive on this show and on our community, here's an early Monday motivator for next week. My tenant up in Bowness gave me notice 2 weeks ago, for the end of August 31st. Or no, wait, June, July, end of July. I gave him his lease does end at the end of July. I'm going to move a month early, but he's given me 2 to 3 months notice. So I'll get it listed this week, and I'll have more than 2 months to find a tenant. So pretty happy about that.
And I guess that's another thing that we forget. I mean, there are a lot of good stories where tenants do have to break the lease for whatever various reasons. If they're going to work with you and get somebody else in there, I mean, so many tenants will do that for you if they know that they're obligated to pay for extended months or other costs. if you explain properly to them that, listen, I don't want to have to charge you extra months and extra time for this. So let's work together. If you help me show it, if you keep the place clean, we can make this work for all of us. And typically they're more than willing to do that if you've been good with them for the duration of the lease. So
something that happened to a friend of mine where she was in a lease and needed to get out. I just throw some numbers out here. It was $1,500 a month, let's say. And they could find a renter for $1,350. So that renter came in at $1,350, and then she's obligated to meet the lease for the last 3 or 4 months that were left. So she just had to pay an extra $150 back to the landlord to meet the lease. And that was something that they arranged there, so that the lease obligations were met. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep.
Yeah. I like that. I think, if you got a good tenant that's not fighting you on their way out the door.
Yeah, and it depends on the market conditions. So a lot of landlords right now, and again, depending where you are, they're excited to have a tenant break a lease because they're a little annoyed because they couldn't raise the rent and now they can. And in some of the markets, I mean, people are seeing $100, $150, $200 increase. You mentioned earlier with one person, Chris. If they can get that 6 months early, that's another $1,200 in their jeans. So.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, same question is coming up here. Is we've also, it looks like some of the landlords, like Lewis has done this as well. They've put statements on their leases that they cannot be auto renewed to month. I guess we won't really know how strong this verbiage is until someone tries it out on a court. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that.
And full circle back to, if you're giving them proper notice that you're not renewing, you got your documentation, you're doing it right, and it's pretty easy to evict somebody for overholding.
So let's end the show on that note. What's proper notice from each of you guys? Andrea?
At least 30 days notice.
Chris?
Sorry, I was checking a comment. Go to Bill. I didn't hear the question anyway. No, I was checking Facebook because some comments were coming.
30 to 60 days. I mean, it really depends on the tenant. We had talked about this previously at one point where a lot of landlords like to wait until they've paid rent for the month, and that's going to be a little bit tight in some cases. You do have the obligation to go after them and let them know that security deposits are not rent and they have to pay. So, give it that full 30 days or even more. If you want them out, give them more time if the market's tight. Otherwise, you could be facing a battle at the end.
Yeah, minimum 30 days. I would agree with that. Chris, the question to you was, and I've got your full uninterrupted attention, is what do you feel is a fair minimum notice to let a tenant know that they're not going to get they're not being renewed, or how much notice would you give? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What's the sweet spot for you?
I'll say that I'll answer it in two ways. One is for the landlord who's petrified that their place is going to get wrecked. You go minimum 30. And for those who want it for other reasons, because of rental increases, give somebody 60 to 90 for the good ones if they don't want the rental increase. But those of you who are scared, get your 30-day in there, 31 days kind of thing, and then you're covered.
Well, perfect. I think that's a great way to end the show right at 7:59, almost on the top of the hour here. Everybody, let's Andrea and Bill, thank you guys for joining us on the show today. Great feedback. And as always, we appreciate you sharing your experiences. Andrea, if people want to get a hold of you and find you, where's the best place to find you at?
They can find me on Facebook, or they can just Google my name, Andrea Warkentin, and I'm at the Realty Experts group here in Red Deer.
Perfect. And Bill?
Oh, so many places.
Name.
Yeah, info@theeducatedlandlord.com, one of the places. Facebook. I'm all over.
Just ask a question in our community and tag Bill. He'll be on it. So there you go.
Usually the same day.
There you go. Fantastic, folks. Well, I think that we'll wrap it up. It's 8:00. That's another show, the only show dedicated to landlording in Alberta, the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. I'm one of your co-hosts, Mackenzie Wilson, alongside myself, Chris Noble, up in beautiful Ponoka, Alberta. We'll see you guys next Wednesday, 7:00.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night, everybody.